Good morning and welcome to the second day of the Solutions Journalism Collaborative Summit. As with yesterday's keynote speaker, David Bornstein, this presentation is also being live streamed across the country by Detroit Public Television and its partnership with PBS Books. My name is Paula Duran, and I am the founder of a local nonprofit, Universal Dementia Caregivers. I'm a psychologist by training, and I have learned firsthand what it means to become a caregiver by supporting both of my parents that eventually died from dementia-related diseases. I founded it at UDC so that I could share the painful and joyful lessons learned as a caregiver, like others like me, who largely are unprepared, often unaware of the journey that's ahead of them. I should note, however, caregiving is the hardest job you'll ever love. Today, 1 in 5 Americans is a caregiver, and that number will continue to rise as our aging population increases. That is why your commitment as journalists to covering the solution side of this national crisis is vital. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation for all it does to elevate caregivers, as well as the support of the New York and Michigan Solutions Journalism Collaborative. The summit has been an amazing experience. As I have been a part of it, I've had the opportunity to meet some of you, to talk to you about the solutions and the ideas that you have moving forward in this area. As a journalist, you know it's all about the story. And today's keynote speaker, Amy Goya, has shared hundreds of stories. Amy is an author, speaker, and a consultant for AARP on the topic of caregiving. She has walked the talk for more than 35 years as an advocate for older adults, children, and families at the local, national, and international levels. This has included the caring of her father, who suffered from Alzheimer's disease 12 years and passed away at the age of 94. We appreciate your love and what you gave to your father. Amy writes widely, has produced a caregiving YouTube series, and is a frequent guest on the Today Show and all other major television programs. As a passionate companion champion for her caregivers, Amy's work is perfect fusion for her personal and professional experiences, and today she is with us and plans to share her insights at the intersection of caregiving and mental health. Can we put our hands together and welcome Amy to the front?
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? If you don't mind, I want to actually start by asking you a question. How many of you are currently caregiving for someone? And how many of you have done that in the past? How many think you might do that in the future? Did anyone not raise your hand? How many of you think you might need a little bit of help someday? Okay, right. So this is why caregiving is an issue that affects everyone, virtually everyone. And every caregiving story is unique. There is no one caregiving thing. There's no one solution. There's no formula that fits every caregiving situation. And I think that's one of the most important things, is telling the stories of caregivers so people understand the diversity in all the experiences. So I'm going to start by giving you the Cliff Notes version overview of my family's caregiving story. I want you to first meet my mom and dad. This is Robert and Patricia. Picture speaks 1,000 words, but a video is even better.
We can.
Go for it.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the flickering candlelight ain't shining
He was
bright
really in charge there.
through the sycamores at me.
Can you tell my dad's a performer?
The new mown hay gives all its fragrance
Really getting into it now.
from the field I used to roam. Oh, the moonlight's fair tonight along the Wabash. Then I long for my Indiana. Home, 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 home.
The big finish.
Period.
Period, he says.
Yay, Daddy! Yay, Mommy!
So that pretty much tells you all I need to know about my parents. And you can see by the way my dad got so emotional that our story indeed begins in Indiana. Both my parents were born and raised in Indiana. My dad went off to college at DePauw University and went off then after 2 years, World War II happened, and he joined the Army and the 10th Mountain Division. And if you're not familiar with them, look them up. Amazing group who ended the war in Italy and then the war in Europe. He came back to college, met my mom, both speech communication majors, and dated in college, and he went off to get his master's in radio at Miami University in Ohio, and then Mom taught high school. They were married in 1950, and then the Korean War happened, and Dad was recalled because he had stayed in the reserves. So they went off to Germany, and they had an adorable little daughter. Actually, I was born in Indiana also. My oldest sister, Karen, was born in Germany. We had 4 adorable little daughters. I'm the youngest. My dad got his PhD at Ohio State University, and he went the organizational interpersonal communication route more. And then he taught at Purdue, where I was born, and then at Ohio University. When I was 5, we moved to Athens, Ohio. Anybody familiar with, oh, yeah, thank you, OU, yeah. So I grew up there. We had a farm outside of town and horses and cows, and Dad was the gentleman farmer. And as you can see, I was the Bob kitten. And then my sophomore year in college, Dad got a position at Arizona State University to chair the communication department. So that changed our lives greatly. They had a pretty much empty nest at that point. Went out to Arizona, but in the meantime, my grandparents were aging in Indiana. I finished school with a degree in music therapy and went to work in Columbus, Ohio, working in nursing homes and adult daycare centers. I later then worked for the Ohio Department of Aging. And so I was closer than my parents. My sisters were in Maryland and California and also one in Ohio. But I was the kid that wasn't married, didn't have children, and I was working in the field of aging. So I did a lot of support, respite for my mom's mom, but I had cousins. I was an only child, so there was no family in South Bend, Indiana, where they lived. And my grandmother developed Alzheimer's disease. Granddaddy was 10 years older than she. He had no idea how to take care of anyone. She always took care of him. He was a career military man, cussed every other word, full of piss and vinegar, we used to like to say. And he really taught me a lot about how people can grow. He did his best, and I taught him how to deal with incontinence and got Meals on Wheels and home services for them eventually. And I also was the color commentary person, putting up the Christmas tree and doing things like that with them. But my dad was caregiving from a distance, so far away, and helping with the finances and being the overall primary caregiver. And he got there as frequently as he could, but I was more the in-person. And in the middle of that, my mom had a stroke, and she was only 63. So my sweet mom had aphasia from the stroke, which means she knew what she wanted to say and couldn't get the words out. It was a communication disorder. For the communication major, that was really, really hard. And so Dad became her primary caregiver while having his parents. I had just started my job at the Ohio Department of Aging, and one of the things you need to really think about is working caregivers, because the 61% of family caregivers are working. I didn't have any vacation leave built up, but they had a program where people could donate leave they weren't using, and so I was able to borrow leave and go off to get my mom into a good rehab, and because this was my field, I knew about these things. And then when I left, my sister came, but eventually my mom never drove again, and she really couldn't cook because she couldn't sequence things, sequencing got off. And so Dad was, a lot of pressure on my dad, and he's the chair of the department, and it's a very stressful job. But when he was 72, he retired. By this time, his parents had passed away. I had moved to Washington, D.C. to work with AARP as a full-time employee. And Dad did a lot of right things. He got very involved as a volunteer. He became an AARP volunteer. I'm sure you can't imagine how that happened. And he learned new things. He became a lobbyist, and he was their communications spokesperson. And he exercised and got involved in his veterans group. He was the president of the State Association for 10th Mountain Division multiple times. We traveled. I went with my parents to Scotland. Despite Mom's stroke, they really did a lot, and they had a really good 10 years at least after Dad retired. But then we started noticing some things with my dad. And the thing that when you have dementia in your family, you always worry, is it going to happen again? And indeed, Daddy was showing some signs. Now, his doctor, and he talked about it before we ever did, and so he started him on some medication very early. He was amazing, and he could still drive and manage basic things, but he started needing help with the big financial matters. Things like refinancing the house and preparing for taxes. So I would help him with things like that. I had a sister living near them. She would go to doctor's appointments. But there came a point where they needed more help. Daddy was having trouble managing Mom's care. And, you know, she was starting to have more and more problems, falls, chronic urinary tract infections, and he was having a harder time with that. And so I knew I needed to be more involved. And I started going out to Arizona whenever I could from Washington, D.C., and I eventually quit my job so that I could have more flexibility and become a consultant. So I lost all my benefits and no more contributing to a pension. And my parents were ecstatic. You could see they were so happy, and that was partly because we just got that IKEA desk put together. But I set up an office in the house, and they felt I was there probably a week or two a month for about 6 months, and I noticed they were eating a lot of Burger King. Daddy had been the cook after Mom's stroke, and their nutrition was not the greatest. And eventually, we wanted Dad to stop driving. Now, Dad had glaucoma also, so he had some visual impairments as well. So Dad said, well, he was furious, and he said, well, then we're going to move. We're not going to be stuck in this house with no transportation. So they wanted to move to a senior community, which that's a whole nother story, process of how we found that. But they found one, I found one for them about 2 miles from their house. We loaded up the truck, made it their home. We were able to put in a lot of their furniture. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. And when I caught them dancing in the living room, I knew that it was going to be okay, that it was going to be home. My whole life, they'd done that. Now, in the meantime, I decided that I had to be there more. And my sister, who lived near them, had a daughter with special needs, and she was kind of throwing up her hands saying, I can't handle this. So I had quit my job and become a consultant already, but I decided to actually move out there. So I kept my place in the DC area, moved into my parents' house, went back every month for work, and managed those 2 properties, basically managed my parents' apartment at the senior community, and we still had the farm in Ohio. So it was a lot on my plate. And my boyfriend was a captain in the fire department in Baltimore County. So we already had a long-distance relationship. Now we had a really long-distance relationship. He was very supportive of what I was doing because we both kind of have a value around family and being there for them. About this time, this guy joined our family. This is Mr. Jackson, and he became my dad's service dog and my partner in caregiving. And clearly, he also took care of Mom. He was both the light of our lives, but he was my dad's rock, and he was his constant companion. My parents did the best in the senior community. The first year, I made sure they got involved in the activities, and Dad still got to exercise, and he walked Jackson all the time. And Jackson always made sure Dad got home to the right apartment because he was starting to get lost a little more easily. But Mom's health was really deteriorating. She was having more falls, and she had a very catastrophic fall where she fell and fractured her spine in 2 places and had to have surgery. She chose to have the surgery. It was very risky. She did pretty well, but then she developed C. diff in the hospital. And if you don't know what that is, it's a terrible bacterial infection. You generally get in a hospital from people not following procedures, and it causes painful, painful diarrhea. And she already had just had colitis. So and I was with her there. We finally got the surgery done. She went to rehab, and then she had a heart attack, congestive heart failure, pneumonia, sepsis, back in the hospital, 40 days and nights all told. And I was with her all but about 5 of those nights. My sister relieved me, and I was working full-time, and so my office became her. Thanks for flexible work things. My office was her hospital room. I did so much care for my mom in that hospital. I felt like I had a nursing degree when I left. Mom was amazing, and this is her learning to walk again, and Mr. Jackson oversaw the whole process. And she did. She learned to walk again and came back to their apartment, and nobody was happier than Mr. Jackson to have them both in the same place. But during that time, my dad was alone more. He was able to walk over. The skilled nursing facility was right on the campus there. It was a CCRC. And so he and Jackson would walk over and spend time with her every day. But I was not able to be in 6 places at one time, so it was really difficult. I started paying for a little bit of help for making sure Dad was taking his meds and feeding Jackson and doing some basic things. And then after Mom got home, about 3 months later, Dad got sick. And Dad was never sick. He had a prostate inflammation problem, and over the course of a week on became extremely confused. He was still pretty independent at this point, just not cognitively managing things. And during that time, he aspirated and got pneumonia because he had a flap in his esophagus. Because he was sick, he just was not able to cough things up the right way. And they talked me into giving him a feeding tube so that until he had surgery, I would not ever do it permanently. And I'm thinking like 2 weeks, we'll just put it in for a little bit, and then he's not going to get pneumonia again. And well, it was 2 months, and very complicated time in our lives. And he was back in the hospital 4 times with the feeding tube clogged, and it was a nightmare. And partially it was a nightmare because 4 days after he got out of the hospital, we lost my niece Shaylee, who was 19 years old, to suicide. She had bipolar disorder and had had a lot of struggles and 2 attempts previously. She was the only grandchild that lived in Arizona and was very close to my parents and worked, in fact, at the facility where they lived. And it was just horrible. There's no words to describe. And I really, there are things that knock you down flat, and this was it. I just did not want to get out of bed. But I had to because my parents needed me. So in a way, caregiving saved me at that time. My sister was, of course, had moved to California. She was not as involved in the caregiving, and at this point, she's really not able to be involved in the caregiving. She was, there's no word, beyond devastated. But I had to get a surgeon for my dad and get an appointment and get him into surgery, and we finally did that. And Mr. Jackson, again, the best therapist of all, got him through surgery. And the day that he ate a real meal was, you can see how much weight he had lost. And that was the first time I think my mom and I smiled and laughed, was how much he enjoyed eating that meal. In the meantime, as I said, we're spending more money. I'm having to pay for somebody to be with Mom while I'm with Dad in the hospital. It's all starting to get really expensive. And of course, they're living in a senior community, which is, $4,000 or $5,000 a month as it is. So I knew something had to change. And the first thing was we had to sell the farm, which was extremely emotional. You talk about mental health issues. This was in our hearts. This had been in our family for so long. And my sister was living there with her family. And so I had to be the bad guy who said, we have to do this because it was really a financial drain for them. And I applied, we had to sell it in order to apply for Veterans Aid and Attendance benefits for my dad to get some cash assistance, which I did, but that would take a year to get. And so something had to happen sooner. And I decided, after a lot of thinking and evaluating different options, to move them back in the house with me. And you can imagine I was terrified about my personal freedom. I wasn't, at least I was over at their place every day, but you could come home and have your little quiet time at home in the evening. But I was going to be with them all the time. In the end, it was less stressful. I had one less property to manage. I could have more control over their care. I determined what they ate. I hired the caregivers and trained them who helped me out. I had a live-in caregiver in the beginning, and I took care of them on the evenings and the weekends. When I traveled to go out of town, my sister Linda came from Ohio. I would fly her in and pay her to be me, do my role, and eventually she ended up moving out after my mom died and was a caregiver for my dad for a long time. My parents did well, although Dad immediately had no idea what the house was. Before, when he would visit, he knew where everything was, and he knew it was the house they used to live in, and when they moved back in, it completely threw him off. We did, though, have a year with no hospitalizations, and so that was a big boom. I had much more quality time with my parents. It was still stressful, believe me, and hard, and constant. But during that year, my oldest sister became very ill. She had Cushing disease, and so she had a tumor in her pituitary gland, and she had 2 surgeries to try and remove the tumor. And she had complications, and guess who was her primary caregiver as well in terms of having her power of attorney and trying to check and make sure she was getting the services. She lived in Maryland, and this was at Johns Hopkins. After that surgery, I went to, I think, North or South Dakota and spoke at an event, and then came back for my dad's 90th birthday, and we had a lovely evening and took him out to eat. And the next morning, Mom couldn't get out of bed. And, I looked back, and I was going to call the doctor that morning because I noticed she had just had a UTI and had a round of physical therapy, and I thought, she seems weak again. But I was too late, and the infection had went septic extremely quickly, and I was sitting next to her in her hospital bed when she coded. And one of the issues is all the legal things that you need to do when you're caregiving, and we had a do not resuscitate order in that hospital, but they rushed her off and intubated her. So it's a cautionary tale because then I ended up having to make that decision to remove the life support, and it was agonizing and really a very difficult thing, although it gave my sisters and my boyfriend time to come and be with us. Daddy was devastated, and we were all devastated. Mom was kind of the light, in our lives, and she was Daddy's North Star. And when you have dementia, it's so important and helpful to have that person. And not that I wasn't and my sisters weren't, but Mom was it, As long as Mom was around, Dad was happy. As you can see, Mr. Jackson was grieving, but he was there for Dad. And Daddy, one of the biggest gifts you can give is to allow the person to be who they are. And Dad was my dad. He was always my daddy. And I could put my head on his shoulder and he would make me feel better, and it made him feel good too, because he could still play that role. I started getting acupuncture at that time to help me with my grief. I was having a very difficult time processing all of these emotions, a lot of stress. I couldn't sleep, depression, anxiety. And I started Dad on acupuncture at the same time, too. And not many people with Alzheimer's get acupuncture, but that's a whole other story I'd love to tell you about. But it was extremely helpful for him. We saw a lot of fun and tried to keep Dad engaged, exercising, lots of walks with Jackson. As you can see, he's a dancer. And a year after my mom died, just after Thanksgiving, I got a call that my sister had collapsed, was rushed to the hospital, intubated, and I had to make that same decision that I did for my mom just about a year later. And her 2 daughters, one was in her last day of college at OU, and the other one had just was a lawyer and had just started a new job, and just such a difficult thing to manage. So we had lost now 3 years in a row, my niece, my mom, and my sister.
I want it to not let you stick.
How about, oh, we ain't got a barrel of
Honey,
maybe we're ragged and funny, but we'll travel along, singing a song, side by side.
very
Oh,
good.
we don't
Now,
know what's coming
Watch Daddy's face.
tomorrow.
Very flat affect.
Maybe a
Right.
trouble
Time with a lot of
and
families.
sorrow,
He doesn't know me,
but
they just
we'll
kind of don't
travel
know how to interact.
along,
But watch him.
singing a
He's still
song,
harmonizing.
side by side through all kinds of weather.
Right.
What
He's
if
with
the
me,
sky
right?
should
The
fall?
physical closeness, the touch,
Just
the
as
music,
long as we're
engaged his brain.
together, it doesn't matter.
Along.
That's right. Oh, we've all had our quarrels and parted. We'll be the same as we started, just traveling along,
Hey.
singing a song, side by side. Bum, diddly da dum.
Bop, bop.
Yay, Daddy! Mwah.
All
We
right.
like to end every song
Good job,
with that,
Daddy.
you know.
Because that.
But I show this because I want you to see the progression and what it's like to have someone that you love so much, who is an incredibly brilliant man, struggle with dementia, and the effect on the caregiver's mental health. You know, regardless of everything else, all the other tasks of caregiving, just that aspect of it is incredibly hard. But there are ways to stay connected. Now, as Daddy's aging and dementia is progressing, Mr. Jackson is too. And Mr. Jackson develops pancreatitis and inflammatory bowel disease and cancer. And he got everything that they got. He got acupuncture, he had physical therapy, he swam in my bathtub, and he did not want to leave Daddy. But when there came a day when I could see the pain was not controlled, we had to say goodbye to Mr. Jackson. And again, Daddy was grieving. But now he's not at a point where he can say, where's the dog? Where's Mr. Jackson? That's how he was with Mom after she died. But his behavior changed vastly, especially the first 2 weeks. And there was a lot more quiet, much less expression. You know, getting a smile from him, like in that one picture, was rare and a special treat. So the things that filled me up were harder to get. Sometimes you get a gift like this. This was after you had a massage. Dad had started getting massages.
Now you've had enough? Will you dance with me, Daddy? Let's have a dance, okay?
Well, that's it out.
All right. We were saying
And the massages and the acupuncture and some of these things, exercise would give him a little cognitive boost often. And this was a special gift.
You could hear the voices singing. They seem to say,
Start singing.
You have stolen my heart. Now don't go away. As we sang love's old sweet song on moonlight day. On moonlight day.
He's still harmonizing.
Ba-da-da.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yay,
Now watch his
Daddy.
face.
Thank you.
See
That
the
was
little
a
bit of
great
a smile?
dance. Thank you so much.
See the little shoulder shrug?
Just
He
for
always
those,
goes, oh,
right.
it's nothing.
Thank you, Daddy.
And he was still doing that. That, again, there are so many things that drain us when we're caregiving, and finding these things that fill us up are so crucial. Daddy developed congestive heart failure and started on oxygen at night and then eventually all the time. And he passed away at home in June of 2018, at home, in his bed, my sisters and I there. And, you know, looking back, it was such a great joy to be able to help my parents through all of this. But it had a huge effect on me as I was trying to juggle my life and have a life, and my work, and my caregiving, and the grief. Grief is a constant part of the journey. Now, I'm just one of 48 million people. And there are lots of statistics on caregiving that I can share with you and that you can get, and I'm happy to help you find. And so I'm not going to go through and outline all of these, but the point is that, as I said, everyone is touched by caregiving. Some of the things I want to really point out is that 51% of caregivers say it's a meaningful experience, but 1 in 5 feel alone. And when you look at the mental health, this is a recent study from Genworth on the impacts of mental health and caregiving. And, 1 in 5 have a sense of isolation. 18% feel guilt. Guilt is a big piece of it. Depression, mood swings, sleep deprivation. We can't cope because we're not getting enough rest. And then I would add all of these emotions, all of these feelings, and all of the challenges that come in, and it's overwhelming, and burnout. In the end, we have burnout, and the pandemic has only made it worse. And again, that's a whole nother talk about how the pandemic has affected us. But some of the key things to think about is that you couldn't go visit your loved one in a nursing home, and to understand what that does to a caregiver's mental health. And also, you couldn't get help in the home, and so you were doing even more of it yourself. I have 3 quick tips. If I have time do I have time to share my 3 quick tips? Okay. On some of the ways that I learned to cope, that I hope will give you some thoughts and ideas as your discussion today. As you can see, humor is a big part of how we coped. Daddy had just said, I was trying to hover over him and help him with his cheeseburger, and he said, "Back off, I got a cheeseburger here." Which he just was the best. The first thing is that this is every caregiver's to-do list, everything. And what I learned is that I can do anything, but I cannot do everything. I did things I never dreamed I would do, but I can't do it all, so I have to build a team. And most people will say, well, I don't have any help. It's just my family. And many people will say, I'm the only one in the family who's doing this. And that would be a really small team. So I encourage caregivers to think much more broadly about who the team is. And the team is all of these people, from the respite programs and the caregiver support programs and the elder care mediators and the care managers. And my mom's hairstylist was a key part of our caregiving team because she had to have that haircut every Friday and have her hair done. And if I couldn't take her, he would come and get them. My mom, my dad, and Mr. Jackson. Sometimes he came to the house. So people think more broadly. That feels a whole lot better, doesn't it, than my one little family member trying to do it all. I always give this example in that the valet parking guy at the mall was like a major part of my caregiving team, because we could park in the shade. In Phoenix, it's very hot in the summer, and he would help me get the wheelchair out and get everybody out of the car, and it was another set of hands, and get Mr. Jackson out, and then we could go walk around the mall. And then when we were done, the car was brought to us. Best $3 ever spent. But he was a part of our team. He knew us, and he did his part. Support for the caregiver is part of the team, too. And many times it's harder to find direct help for your loved ones than it is to find help for the caregiver, to free the caregiver up to do the things that the caregiver needs to be the one to do. So I had Debbie, who was a concierge, and she would help me with things like putting out holiday decorations and things that helped me and lifted my spirits and my parents. But she would check on my parents or organize a closet or just things that lowered my stress. She sorted mail for me. But they're neighbors. My neighbors would mow my grass. My boyfriend would come out and he would do things for me, or he'd do fix-it things around the house. We had a lot of variety of caregiving. As I mentioned, my sister Linda moved out to Arizona, and my nephews came then soon after, and they were part of the team. But everybody had different roles in the team, and I've had, as you see, different roles as a caregiver in different caregiving situations. My sister's humor with the trash bags was when she was helping me clean out my older sister's home after she passed away. Don't know what I would have done without her, coming from California multiple times to help with that. My boyfriend took the garage, which looked like this, and made it look like that, which was, talk about stress, right? We had mobile services in the home, huge part of our team. My mom had many x-rays. We had swallow tests at home, ultrasounds, labs coming to draw the blood, et cetera. We had a lot of support from the VA, was a big part of our team. Eventually, my dad had home-based primary care, total game changer. And the VA has a lot of great caregiver support as well. they put in these ramps for us at no cost, and we got lots of other medical equipment. The area agencies on aging, huge, huge, huge piece of the team, and it's always the first place where I send people. The organizations like the heart associations, the diabetes associations, Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Foundation, and the caregiving organizations, the Rosalind Carter Institute, the Caregiver Action Network, the National Alliance for Caregiving, and AARP has an incredible array of resources for family caregivers, and at events and activities and things at the local level as well. My second tip is that I learned that I can't run on empty. And now this does seem like a logical thing, doesn't it? We all know as caregivers we have to take care of ourselves. But for me, it wasn't until I went to the gas station on fumes and was worried I would break down and realized after I filled the car up with gas and I pulled out of the gas station that the car actually runs better on a full tank of gas. Like, it runs differently. Pay attention next time. And I was like, wow, I've been expecting myself to run on empty all the time and be just as efficient and get everything done. And I thought, that doesn't make sense. And it put it in a different mode for me. This is literally how I got through more than a decade of caregiving. I realized that it's not selfish, it's practical. You give energy out, you have to fill back up, right? So I started focusing on ways to fill my tank. And this is the way that I looked at it, and I'm not making this up to be a little theory. This is how I did it. I would envision a little fuel gauge and what I'm feeling, drained, what's happening with me, what's going to fill me up. Mostly we have time for the quick things when we're caregiving, but you also have to have the premium fill-ups, the class or going to the support group or going out to dinner or things like that. The routine maintenance, sleep, number one, because again, you can't cope when you're exhausted. Meditation, counseling, life coaching, everybody has their own things that are their basics that they need to have on an ongoing basis. But you also need tune-ups when you have time away from caregiving. And that's not, I'm going to stop taking care of my husband so I can go take care of my grandkids for a week. It's I'm not taking care of anyone. And that is a really hard thing to do when you're caregiving. And even if it's just for a few hours, you have to have that. Respite is a big piece of taking care of ourselves as caregivers. And respite just means somebody else is taking care of your loved one. And it might be family or friends or a respite program or a place where your loved ones go for a short stay. There are wonderful resources here. I'm not going to outline all of them for time's sake, but again, I'm going to make this PowerPoint available to you if you want it so that you can have all of these, and I'm going to be here all day to discuss some of the incredible solutions and resources that are available. Caregiver support groups. Connecting with other caregivers is really one of the main things that helps because we learn the most from each other and people who get it, right? And it can be a formal support group. Some of them are online support groups or in person, but it can also be informal things like social media. I lead AARP's Family Caregivers Discussion Group on Facebook. We started it in July of 2019, right before the pandemic, and we now have over 11,000 members. And I am so proud of this group. I think it's the most important thing I've done in my entire career because people, when you are in that moment, you can go online and post your question or say, I can't do this anymore, or my sister's driving me crazy, or whatever the thing is, and there's somebody there to respond pretty much 24/7. You've always got somebody who gets it, and we do a lot of practical problem solving. I do a lot of referrals in the group. Technology can be helpful with this as well, with caregiving, easing your stress, and also self-care, rest and relaxation. After my mom died, I couldn't sleep, and I started listening to a meditation as I went to sleep every night. I still listen to that meditation every night. It saved my life. Joy is truly our greatest survival skill. And over again, you have to both notice the inherent joy in the day-to-day work, but also take time to create the joy. Taking my parents out on our Fun Friday adventures was not the easiest thing and required some planning, but in the end, it filled us up. And just little things like going through the Starbucks drive-thru and getting a lemonade and a cake pop after a doctor appointment. Sometimes it's just hugging the dog or hugging your loved ones or just having a quiet moment. My third and final tip is to monitor your mindset. You can have two caregivers who have very similar, no two stories are exactly the same, but kind of have similar situations, and they come through it very differently. And this has always been curious to me in thinking about, okay, why are they coming through it differently? And what I always come back to is their mindset, the way that they view the experience. Self-awareness is a big piece of it, and figuring out where you're coming from. Whenever I lost my temper or I was either coming from fear or exhaustion. And being aware, Daddy was exhausted, I was exhausted. I was in that state a lot of the time. And so I had to very consciously try to come back and operate from love and joy rather than the fear and the guilt and the fatigue. I tried to focus on what I can do and not what I can't as much. So I can't fix everything. And this is, for mental health, this is what helped me the most. I can't fix everything, but I can be a really good advocate, and I can do the best I can and do the research. I can't stop aging or cure the disease. I really wanted the cure for Alzheimer's to come while Daddy had it. But I can be there and be there for the duration. I can't do everything, but I can get help, and I can adjust the goals, and I can attack it that way. I can't change other people, and this is one of the biggest drains that I see and constantly, every day in that Facebook group. Somebody's mad at someone who's not helping as much as they should be, but I can accept it and release the resentment and move on because I need my energy for caregiving. I don't have energy to expend on being mad at my loved ones or my siblings. You can't please everyone. I was talking to somebody here in the group who said, yeah, people live at a distance and they have lots of advice for me, or the family who comes in and wants to tell you everything to do, and that's really hard for people sometimes, even when they mean well. But I can have peace of mind that I'm doing my best, and I can't control everything, but I can control my attitude. Remembering why we're doing it. Now, there are many people who are caregiving who are not really very fond of the person they're caring for, but they're doing it. Not everyone has a loving relationship that I had with my parents, and I recognize that, but they're doing it. So why are they doing it? Out of a sense of responsibility, duty, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but coming back to, I'm doing this because I choose to do it. And that's why you'll see a lot of surveys that say caregivers didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. Everything we do is a choice, right? And so I've been in this almost 40 years in this field, and I see many people who have nobody looking out for them. And it's not always because they don't have family. It's just that people choose not to play that role. So I tell caregivers, I'm not a victim. I choose to do this, and it takes me out of that victim mindset, which is not helpful. It's just not helpful. Valuing what we do is helpful, and it also helps other people value what we do. So remembering this, and I had to change my view of success. I was feeling like a failure every time Mom had a fall, or I forgot to do something, or I didn't fill that prescription in time. And I thought, this isn't helping Mom and Dad, and it's certainly not helping me. So I changed my view of success as a caregiver to basically being there. I realized that's the one thing I can commit to. I will always be there for them and do the best I can and be with them, accompany them on this journey. There's no perfect caregiver, but when we get knocked down, we can learn to ride those waves and get back up. If the dogs can do it, we can do it. And I think that's the thing, is focusing on being resilient. That's really the goal, as a caregiver. Despite the challenges and all the stress and the heartbreak and the grief and all the difficult aspects of it, the majority of caregivers say when they look back, it was a good experience. So why is that? And I tell caregivers, think about what you're doing that you're going to look back on and feel good about, and do more of that. I want to end with just a little quick advice from my dad.
Keep cool, but don't freeze.
Got it?
All right, Dad.
Okay?
Yep.
And enjoy it. Do it when you're trying to work and do it. Fine. Enjoy it and do it. That's it. Don't fight it at all. You give it your best shot.
Give it your best shot, right?
Lots of people do. And lots of people don't.
That's
You
true.
hang in there.
And you know the one other thing,
And we, as a group,
mm-hmm,
as far as I'm concerned, we are groups of good, period. Whether it works out a little bit or not. The way it works out, the way it works out. The way it is.
yep,
And do it your best shot,
okay.
okay?
Okay. You always told me don't fight the problem.
Okay, everybody agree?
Everybody's
Do y'all
agreed.
agree?
All right. And here's to it to everyone.
Here's to all of you. Thank you so much for what you're doing and looking for solutions for caregivers. We need the help, and we need to be able to connect with the solutions that are out there. It's one of the biggest problems that we either don't identify as a caregiver or we don't have any idea that there is support and help out there. So I'm going to be here all day. I probably have gone over my time and probably don't have time for Q&A, am I right? Sorry. I'm sorry. But I have other resources in the PowerPoint here too. And if you'd like a copy of that, just let me know. Thank you.